So I wanted to take a quick look at the diets of other presidents. Okay, this is from Wounded Warriors. Okay, so this is President Washington's diet. Okay, so the just right diet for, so basically he loved fish, nuts, and fruits, especially cherries. He was known to crack the nuts open in his mouth, which may have contributed to his teeth issues. Now, what you need to understand about this, all of these gentlemen, their diets are going to be whole food diets until you move up a little bit, because there just weren't any really refined foods except maybe some sugar. So the just right diet for George would be the zone diet. It encourages the consumption of high-quality carbohydrates and fats, such as olive oil, avocado, and nuts. We're sure Martha would agree. Physical conditioning, George Washington was in his mid-20s. He was 6 foot 2 inches. Now, this actually shows the improvement in nutrition in the United States compared to Great Britain. The average American soldier in the Revolutionary War was roughly 6 inches taller than the average British soldier. Also, comparing South Koreans to North Koreans, the average South Korean is about 6 inches taller than the average North Korean, which shows better nutrition in the South Korean population. So what you have to understand is the availability of fresh foods really does contribute to better growth potential, regardless of the genes, because you have to remember the majority of Americans at that time were British. The majority of Koreans, whether North Korean or South Korean, are obviously Korean. So it shows that regardless of genetics, the quality of the diet really does contribute to health, as is concerned with growth potential, fertility, virility, etc. So this is Roosevelt's diet. He was not a vegan. Roosevelt loved fresh game and was an avid hunter. Breakfast consisted of hard-boiled eggs with rolls and coffee. His lunch was usually baked or fried chicken and a glass or two of milk. His dinner was a dinner with the family. The perfect one for him is the Atkins diet, which allows you to, eat heavier foods, higher protein, higher fat foods. Physical conditioning, Roosevelt was a rower and boxer. What might be unknown to many people is when Roosevelt was younger, he was very sick. He had asthma and stuff. He cured a lot of his illnesses. I believe he had polio or something too, if I'm not, I know his cousin or whatever did. But he cured his ailments by embracing physical culture. That's why he was such an avid promoter of physical culture. He was a rower, a boxer, a rancher, a big game hunter, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Woodrow Wilson, his diet was, he kept it simple. Chicken salad was his favorite food, and he also enjoyed an assortment of fruits and vegetables. Country ham, peach cobbler, buttermilk, fresh eggs, hot biscuits, homemade ice cream, and plain white cake. Just right diet for him is the fruitarian diet. He would only have to give up the ham, and I think it said chicken salad. Physical conditioning, Wilson was always spry and athletic. He played more than 1,000 rounds of golf during his 2 terms in office. Gerald Ford had a healthy appetite. His breakfast was fresh squeezed or blah, 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 so he ate fairly well. He would have crisp Boston lettuce, red onion salad, followed by comfort food like casserole, blah, blah, blah. The just right diet for him is the Weight Watchers diet, which controls portion sizes, essentially, or overall caloric intake. Physical conditioning, Ford was an accomplished athlete at the University of Michigan, a former Eagle Scout, and was a starting center on 2 undefeated national championship teams, the Packers and Lions. Offered him contracts to play pro football. He lived to the age of 93. So he knew what he was doing by following a well-balanced diet, essentially, even if it did have some refined foods. So President Ronald Reagan, his diet, although he loved eating jelly beans, Reagan which he started eating when he gave up smoking his pipe. Reagan loved sitting down with First Lady Nancy for a breakfast of juice, fruit, cereal, and a boiled egg, and decaf coffee. Lunch was usually soup and bread. For dinner, Reagan preferred the comfort foods of his youth, usually dishes with chicken, veal, or fish. The just right diet for Reagan. There is a jelly bean diet, but they wouldn't recommend it. It's the South Beach diet, which, of course, is basically the zone diet. It's a diet that recommends whole grains, specific fruits, vegetables, appropriate fats, yada, 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 based on their glycemic index, physical conditioning. In his youth, Reagan was quite the athlete. He played football, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and we're going to move on here. So I wanted to talk about some of the breakthroughs of the National Institute of Health. Of course, a long tradition of vaccine breakthroughs. They eradicated many deadly diseases, including the Ebola virus, combating lethal tick-borne illnesses, investigating approaches to fighting meningitis, a new way to mass-produce vaccines, the first tests for vaccine effectiveness, ensuring vaccine safety. National Institute of Health put rubella on the run. Now, remember, the National Institute of Health received massive cuts under the Trump administration. Keep that in mind. Making hepatitis history, banishing deadly bacterium. The IRP vaccine research puts pertussis in its place. 2 decades of work culminates in a cancer-preventing vaccine. Okay, these are things that people should look into. This is the kind of research that Donald Trump cut funding to, okay? Keep that in mind. So many people in my position that take a lot of supplements, they don't really like the FDA, but the problem with that is the FDA had a very good purpose, and the purpose of the FDA was to make sure people were not being poisoned by unscrupulous sellers of false products that were non-effective or poisonous. People like to think that the free market will manage, like basically the markets manage themselves or the markets regulate themselves. That is not true by a long shot. Essentially what happens is you have a lot of hucksters out there that are putting bad stuff in their stuff, and it kills people. Look at the black market, for example. Drugs are a good example. Look at what people cut drugs with. Look at the fentanyl epidemic in the United States. Okay, if heroin, like I would recommend, if heroin was legalized and regulated and taxed, there wouldn't be any fentanyl in the heroin, okay? So that's the thing. But because it's not regulated and taxed, you unfortunately have issues with it. So the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 and its capacity, the FDA is charged with protecting the health of the U.S. public to ensure the quality of its food, medicine, and cosmetics. Okay, that's a very important thing. Timeline through the years. This is just going through the history of it, but you can check it out. The Harrison Narcotic Act. It's very, very important that you understand prosthetic arm typical of children born of mothers that were prescribed thalidomide. That was a drug that caused birth defects, that caused the destruction of the limbs. But that's the thing, is the FDA would pull bad drugs off the market. The problem with the FDA, as with many things in this country now, is the fact that capitalist pig dog thinking has gotten into the works and is corrupting the FDA in many ways. But the puritanical FDA, if you go back to a fully publicly funded, publicly regulated FDA, it's a beautiful thing that did a lot of great things that helped to make sure that our drugs were safe and effective, and it still does. We just have to go back a ways and re-implement things that work, that we know work, okay? And go back to the FDA the way it was. The FDA is not a bad thing. The FDA is a good thing. But things like Operation Warp Speed and things like that, I think, have really hurt the credibility of the FDA, which is sad because the FDA has made sure that our drugs and foods and cosmetics were safe and effective and pure, moving forward. So this is what I thought was funny. This is the Time magazine article, The White Supremacist Origins of Exercise and 6 Other Surprising Facts About the History of U.S. Physical Fitness. Let's get this straight. Physical fitness had its place in racial betterment. Not necessarily white supremacy, but so this is the whole idea. Now the radical left, and remember, Donald Trump would agree with this because he's anti-exercise. They're trying to say that if you care about your health, if you eat right, if you exercise, if you're not a fat slob that doesn't want to do anything, you may be a white supremacist. Okay, so how did U.S. exercise trends go from reinforcing white supremacy to celebrating Richard Simmons? That evolution is explored in a new book by historian of exercise Natalia Melman. Petrelza, author of the book Fit Nation, The Gains and Pains of America's Exercise Obsession. Nowadays, at the beginning of every new year, many Americans hit the gym to work off their holiday feasts. The momentum usually starts to fade in mid-January, according to a 2019 analysis of data on fitness tracking apps by Bloomberg, but such New Year's resolutions are pretty new. It's not until the 1980s that you start to see a consensus that everybody should be doing some form of exercise. Okay, so perfect for reading, blah, 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 treadmill, stationary bike, yada, yada, yada. So let's see. What's the most surprising thing you learned? Okay, it was super interesting reading the reflections of physical fitness enthusiasts in the early 20th century, yada, yada, yada. Okay, they said we should get rid of corsets. Corsets are an assault on women's form, and they are. They're dangerous. And that women should be lifting weights and gaining strength. At first, you feel like this is so progressive. Then you keep reading, and they're saying white women should start building up their strength because we need more white babies. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Is that a bad thing? Okay, so they are writing during an incredible amount of immigration soon after enslaved people have been emancipated. This is totally part of a, quote, white supremacy project. What you don't see her mentioning is so was Planned Parenthood. Okay, so that was a real holy crap moment as a historian. What I like is they pick and choose what they point out. A lot of things had their origins in so-called white supremacy. And it wasn't white supremacy, it was nativism. Okay? That's not necessarily white supremacy. Okay? It was the idea that America was for Americans. And by American, I mean white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Americans. What's wrong with that idea? England is for the English, Ireland is for the Irish, Germany is for the Germans. You know, there's nothing wrong with that idea. Now, what's funny is this woman, her name is, what's her name? I think it's Melman. I guarantee you that she would probably think that Israel is for the Israelis. Okay? And I guarantee you she would have no problem with Israeli supremacy or an Israeli obsession with exercise, if you get what I'm saying here. Okay? So my point is, the people, you got to watch your ass, because the people that are telling you that, you know, exercise is white supremacy and right-wing extremism and all this shit are, frankly, full of shit. There's nothing racially oriented or politically oriented about physical fitness. Jack LaLanne showed that, you know, and John Harvey Kellogg, yes, he wanted to better the race. Okay? Is there something wrong with that? And I think people really should check out the website eugenics.net and read some of the, or is it, yeah, I think it's eugenics.net. But the point is, Future Horizons is the name of the group. Maybe read some of that shit from, you know. But my point is, there's nothing wrong with wanting people to be healthy. Okay? Now, we do have better science, etc., and I do recommend people read La Raza Cosmica. People that follow my channel know that I have not supported white supremacy since the founding of this channel. And there's nothing on this channel that supports white supremacy. People can take it to mean whatever the hell they want, but the facts are the facts. Exercise is not a form of white supremacy. Exercise is not a form of far-right extremism. Exercise is meant to get you healthy, and if it's done too much, it can get you sick. Okay? So moving on. So this is another one about, this is about fascist fitness. And this is by a guy named Mark Townsend, and this is in The Guardian. And they're talking about the far right is increasingly recruiting via online fitness groups whose popularity soared during the pandemic. Who gives a shit? European and U.S. fight groups are regularly glorified in these groups, including the white supremacist Rise Above movement, or RAM, notorious for having 4 members arrested in 2018 for... Now, what's funny about this, they're not talking about all the other multiracial MMA groups and multiracial fight clubs and multiracial fitness projects and multiracial blah, 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 blah. So they're conveniently not talking about that, but they're focusing heavily on this crap with the swastika flags and the at-home fitness booming and the blah, blah, blah. So apparently this was because of an analysis by an anti-fascist organization that's probably a bunch of fat, drooling idiots that hope not hate, says the British far right has positioned physical fitness as part of a wider political struggle. Physical fitness is a wider political struggle. We need to get healthy. Nobody was calling Barack Obama a far-right extremist when he was encouraging people not to eat shit food and to move. Remember, Michelle Obama did that just move shit, okay? And there's terrible school lunches that everybody would, But the point is, nobody accused Michelle or Barack Obama of being neo-Nazis as far as I know. Isn't that interesting? The danger of these groups lies firstly in their emphasis on transforming activists into soldiers that might be motivated to commit acts of violence. Blah, blah, blah. Antifa does this too, but you don't see any mention of Antifa. Okay? That's what I find interesting about the way these people focus on the far right. Oswald Mosley and his British Union of Fascists also emphasize the importance of physical fitness. Now, those that remember my videos on Oswald Mosley will remember what was Oswald Mosley really big on. He was really big on peace. So the organizing of sports clubs and physical fitness has more to do with the physical health of the nation and the population, as every political party worth its salt, whether it's National Socialist, Fascist, Liberal, Democratic. For example, John F. Kennedy, the president's physical fitness test and all that shit. We need to be a healthy nation, okay? Barack Obama promoted physical health and well-being, okay? We need to be healthy, okay? And part of being healthy is exercising, eating right, etc. But with this fat acceptance bullshit, they're trying to promote this idea that being healthy is some kind of hate against people that aren't white or aren't male or what have you. And that's simply not the case. Are there members of these groups that are interested in physical fitness? I will guarantee you it's a minority of these groups that are interested in physical fitness. Most far-right people, so-called far-right people, or nationalists, are just as fat as the general population, if not more so. A lot more, I would say more fat people are interested in those groups. People might remember the white student union guy that was obese. Here, I'll try and find him real quick. So what I want to point out, this guy found at the white student union, and there was a lot of this Matthew Heimbach guy. Now, does he look like a physical fitness enthusiast to you? Does he? You're more likely to find obese people involved in white supremacist movements than you are to find people of healthy weights. That's a fact. Okay? Ironically, up until recently, and probably still so, you're more likely to find, I would say, let me see, I'm going to do research on that real quick while I'm here. Now, I'm actually just curious, do political factors matter in explaining under and overweight people? More liberals, I've met more liberals that are health obsessed than I have conservatives or so-called far-right white people, etc. So they study the role played by political factors, yada, yada, yada. Let's see, introduction, blah, blah, blah. So using the global perspective and employing a large database, yada, yada, yada. With obesity and malnutrition rapidly becoming global problems affecting yada, 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 even controlling for large country fixed yada, equality of political... Their findings are in line with the broadly related literature suggesting that democratic countries seem to be able to increase the amount of calories consumed. Okay, so this is more about the political structure of the country, not of the individuals. Let me do a little more here. So this is about political affiliation, weight determine your opinion on fighting obesity. So Republicans, no matter how much they weigh, because they're not insane in this respect, believe eating and lifestyle habits cause obesity, and research found. But among Democrats, there is more of a dividing line, blah, blah, blah. Self-reported overweight people were significantly more likely to believe that obesity is caused by genetics. Exactly, because fat people never want to take responsibility for the fact that they're fat. But your body can't make fat out of it. Nothing. So moving forward. So, unfortunately, everything's about obesity stigma, but the politics of obesity, 7 steps to government action against obesity. Guarantee you this is a liberal that constructed this, because liberals tend to be the only ones concerned about people dying of obesity-related diseases. So, concern is rapidly growing about obesity rates in the United States. This paper analyzes yada, 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 yada. They draw on historical experience in 4 other private realms: alcohol, illegal drugs, tobacco, and sexuality, to identity, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is not the full abstract here, but what I want to explain, when Obama was in office, I was a big believer in not taxing sugary beverages, okay? Because I didn't see any point in taxing sugary beverages, okay? And forcing cereal companies to reduce the amount of sugar in their products. However, I now see that was a good idea, because I'm somebody, as a social conservative, I do not believe that you can legislate morality. However, this is not a morality thing. If you start making people pay more to be fat and to be unhealthy, they don't do it. It's like smoking, and that's really the way to deal with things. That would also be a better way to deal with alcohol consumption, is to tax the hell out of it, as opposed to, prohibiting it. So people don't grasp that. They think that it's, because it has worked with smoking. People smoke less because they can't afford it. A lot of people have quit smoking because they can't afford it. That is a good thing, okay? A lot of people will give up sugar and sugar-sweetened beverages and sugar-sweetened cereal if they can't afford it. Now, I also believe in education, and I like the fact that Mexico has warning labels on high-sugar products, because when they started introducing these highly refined products due to NAFTA, their nation exploded in a wave of obesity. So now they are educating their public with warning labels, and Dr. Robert C. Atkins had many years ago suggested that high sugar products contain a Surgeon General's warning on the package that states that the product is harmful to your health and may be a contributing factor to heart disease and diabetes, which we know for a fact that sugar is such a thing. And I think that both bringing back the high taxing of sugary beverages, candies, colas, sodas, etc. would be a good idea. However, I don't think taxing diet beverages or alternatives such as low sugar protein bars or things of that nature is a good idea. I think that, if anything, maybe they should even be subsidized to encourage people to consume healthful alternatives to the highly sugar-sweetened products. Okay, and that's all for this video series here.